Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's me Samuel Taylor Ackroyd and good morning from Knock Ireland West Airport, more commonly known as Knock Airport in the Republic of Ireland. Today I will be flying back home to Edinburgh in Scotland with Ryanair, which is one of just 2 airlines that operate regularly scheduled flights out of this rather small airport, with the other one being the Irish national carrier Aer Lingus. The airport is not a very busy airport at all, with there only being a few flights a day, with the majority of those flights being to and from the United Kingdom. But Ryanair do have some flights from Knock Airport to holiday destinations such as Tenerife and Malaga. Upon entering the terminal is the check-in area, which was far from busy when I was passing through, an information centre and a Ryanair ticket desk. There is also a little shop selling drinks and snacks, as well as a shelf of leaflets about all the local attractions. Further down the check-in area is the car rental places. Up the set of stairs next to the check-in desks is a bar and cafe, which has a rather good selection of food and drinks on offer, and there is also a prayer room up here. Something cool about this bar is that it offers such brilliant views of aircraft parked up, but the only aircraft that you will see are Ryanair 737s and Aer Lingus A320s. Security is just to the left of the check-in desks, but before you actually go through security, you actually have to pay a €10 development fee, which applies to everyone aged 12 and over. Security took me hardly any time at all this morning, as it wasn't very busy at this time. Straight after security, you pass through the duty-free store, which is the only store throughout the departure lounge at Ireland West Airport. When you pass through duty-free, there isn't much to do, as there's only one restaurant and a bar, as well as the toilets and a small play area for kids. However, there are some seats that have plug sockets so that you can charge your devices before you fly. I decided to go to the bar and enjoy a cider while waiting for my flight back home to Edinburgh. Today my flight would be boarding from Gate 2, which is one of just 3 gates at this small airport. Unfortunately, you don't get very good views of the apron from the departure lounge windows, but you can still see our Ryanair 737 pulling onto stand from its inbound flight from Edinburgh. Soon it was time for us to board the aircraft. The aircraft flying me back home to Edinburgh today is the exact same Ryanair Boeing 737-800 that I flew on 2 days prior from Edinburgh to Knock. That 737 being registered as Echo India-Echo Papa Delta, which at the time was 12 years old and has flown with Ryanair all its life. Quite a coincidence to be flying on the exact same aircraft on both the outbound flight and the return flight of a trip. As I mentioned in the previous trip report of the outbound flight of this trip, this is one of Ryanair's 737s that has the older Ryanair seats. My seat on this flight is the exact same one I sat in on the outbound flight of this trip, which is 23A, which would normally have a great view of the left wing, but because the window is so dirty and scratched, it unfortunately doesn't really have the best view in this case. As you can see, it was very rainy on the day of this flight, and this flight was actually on one of the 2 days of Storm Isha in January 2024, which had gusts of up to 70 knots. Because of this, I thought that at least one missed approach could be made while attempting to land at Edinburgh, or even a diversion, so I was very interested to see what the outcome of this flight would be. I was also wondering if we would even get off the ground at all because of Storm Isha. But eventually we started getting ready for departure from Knock Ireland West Airport, and we began taxiing and backtracking runway 26. Now here is the rather bumpy Storm Isha takeoff from runway 26 at Knock Ireland West Airport.
Devices such as tablets and mobile phones in flight mode may be used throughout the flight. Please select flight mode now and hold your device securely or place it.
Well, that was certainly the most turbulent takeoff I've ever experienced in my life so far, and I'm sure the nervous flyers didn't enjoy it at all. We ended up taking off from runway 26 nearly half an hour behind schedule. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot to see out the window as it was so dirty, which means I didn't get the best takeoff or landing footage. Now for a little look at the seats. The legroom on Ryanair 737-800s is a lot better than on the newer 737 MAX aircraft. For reference, I am roughly 6 foot tall. The tray table on the older and thicker Ryanair seats is very large and sturdy, though this one was definitely not the cleanest. 2 days prior, when I flew on this aircraft from Edinburgh to Knock, so in the opposite direction, the tray table was nice and clean, so someone clearly had a spillage in the 2 days since I had flown on this aircraft. The safety cards are printed onto the back of the seat in front of you, as there are no seat back pockets on any Ryanair aircraft. Above the seats are the air vents, call bells, reading lights, and no smoking and seatbelt signs. A little look at one of the bathrooms. It was clean and everything worked as it should, and that's all I can really say about it. The Buy On Board menu is accessible via the QR code, which leads you to the Buy On Board menu, which is on the Ryanair app. So make sure you have the Ryanair app downloaded before you fly with Ryanair. There is a decent amount of food and drinks available, as well as a few meal deals. Though on this flight, I didn't bother with buying anything, as the flight was less than an hour long. It wasn't too long before we started descending into Edinburgh, and it was one hell of a bumpy ride. Unfortunately, since the window was so dirty, I couldn't really get any decent shots of Edinburgh while we were descending. I must say that I was actually surprised we landed on the first attempt, as the final minute or so of the flight was super bumpy, and I was certain that we were going to make at least one missed approach. But to my surprise, that actually wasn't the case at all. Although unfortunately, the same couldn't be said for most of the flights that were bound for the United Kingdom on this day, as Storm Isha battered them too heavily for them to be able to land. So we got very, very lucky on this flight. We landed onto runway 24 at Edinburgh at 3:21 p.m, so only 11 minutes behind schedule, which is no big deal to me at all, and I'm just relieved that we didn't have to divert due to Storm Isha. It was certainly a very interesting experience flying through a storm with winds gusting as high as 70 knots. Luckily though, it wasn't that bad while the flight was taking off or landing or while we were cruising, but it was a rather bumpy flight. Despite the storm, this was just a typical experience with Ryanair. The seat is comfortable enough in my opinion, and the crew were very friendly and attentive, and also took the time to let me have a flight deck visit after we arrived on stand. Though the tray table has certainly seen better days, like 2 days prior when it was nice and clean on my outbound flight on this trip. And the window has also certainly seen better days. I paid £17.15 for the base fare, which only allows you to bring a small bag that fits under the seat in front of you, plus an airport duty-free bag if you end up buying duty-free. I also paid an extra £8 to select seat 23A. So I paid a total of £25.15 for this flight, which is such great value for money and why I love flying with Ryanair and why I always recommend them. Even if the aircraft wasn't exactly the cleanest, it was a short flight lasting less than an hour and it was dead cheap, so I don't really mind any shortcomings, such as the dirty tray table or the dirty window. At least it wasn't the actual seat that was dirty, otherwise it would have been a very different story and my opinions on this flight would have been very different. I'd also just like to thank the crew for allowing me a flight deck visit once everyone else had disembarked the aircraft. Thanks so much for watching this trip report, and thank you Ryanair for the great flight. Stay safe and I will see you all in the next video.